Hello guys, today I am going to explain about a topic which comes under photosynthesis. The subtopic name is the C4 pathway. Here C stands for carbon, C stands for carbon, C stands for carbon, and 4 means nothing but the organic compound in which 4 carbons are present. Since the first formed compound in the Kelvin cycle which contain the 4 carbon atoms, then that pathway is called C4 pathway. See, I am going to explain about the C4 pathway. C4 pathway means C stands for carbon, 4 means you need to understand the 4 carbon atoms are present in the first formed compound of Kelvin cycle. Let's get into the topic now. So, this C4 pathway is also called as Hatch and Slack pathway. Why? Because these two scientists who has given this concept, how the C4 pathway takes place in photosynthetic plants. So, let us study the pathway. So, going through the main important steps in that. So, after this slide, I am just going to show the complete diagram which explains about the C4 pathway. But before that, I just want to tell you that, see, look at the primary CO2 acceptor. That means, once the plants taken this CO2, what happens? In the chloroplast, in the cell of the mesophils, what happens? The CO2 is accepted by a compound. CO2 is accepted by a organic compound. That organic compound, in case of the Hatch and Slack pathway, it is going to be a phosphoenol pyruvate. You need to understand that the first acceptor, that means the primary CO2 acceptor in some of the plants. But in some other plants, there are two types of plants that I am not going to discuss here. I am just discussing about the C4 plants. In this, the first CO2 acceptor is going to be PEP. That means phosphoenol pyruvate. You need to understand that. So, the primary acceptor, primary CO2 acceptor in the C4 plant is phosphoenol pyruvic acid or pyruvate. Shortly we call it as a PEP. So 3 carbons, 1, 2, 3 carbons. 3 carbon atoms are present in this compound. That is the first, that means what? It is a primary acceptor which is present in that. See, look at which accept the CO2 in the form of, see, obviously the chemical conversions takes place. So that is going to be HCO3 minus and is present in the mesophil cells. The interesting things you need to note is, see, look at here, the CO2 has 1 carbon and here the 3 carbon, and 3 carbon plus and 1 carbon, it's going to become a 4 carbon. That 4 carbon name is what? It is going to be oxaloacetic acid. So, since the first formed compound, which is stable in the Kelvin, which is stable in the photosynthesis in some of the plants, it's going to be a 4 carbon. That is why these plants shows C4 pathway. Now let's get into the topic more detail by just going through the diagram. Now before that, see, look at here. Now what enzyme is going to play an important role here? So the enzyme which is going to play an important role is the PEP carboxylase. Shortly we call as PEP case. So shortly we call it as a PEP case. That means, no, why we just given the name PEP case? Because it is going to react with the phosphoenol pyruvate. The phosphoenol pyruvate is a 3-carbon compound. So that is going to react with the carbon dioxide. For this reaction, obviously this enzyme plays an important role. So what is the name of that enzyme? PEP carboxylase. Shortly we call as the PEP case. The next one is, and another important thing you need to just note it down is, see the mesophyll cells, because we all know very well that the mesophyll cells have Rubusco enzyme in the majority, plants. But there are some plants in which the mesophyll cells do not have the Rubusco enzyme. Rubusco enzyme means nothing but the ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. See, no need to confuse here. RU stands for ribulose, bis stands for bisco, ribulose, bis carboxylase and oxygenase enzyme. Actually, this enzyme is absent in C4 plants. This enzyme is absent in the plants which shows the C4 pathway. Understand? This enzyme is absent in this, the mesophyll cells. But of course, this enzyme is present, but this enzyme is present in some other cells of the C4 plants. That we will discuss everything. So by going for the diagrammatic representation. So guys, this is a very, very important diagrammatic representation which tells all about the C4 plants. Now, before that, see, look at here. Now this is a mesophyll cells. This is a mesophyll cell, and this is a bundle sheath cell. This is a bundle sheath cell. See, if you observe the anatomy of these plants in which the C4 cycle is present, see there are two types of cells are going to present in the leaf anatomy. That anatomy, you can call it as the Kranz anatomy. So, in which there are two types of cells are present. Look at the mesophyll cell. See the mesophyll cell in which there is no Rubusco enzyme. Please note it down. This is a very, very important, because this enzyme is absent in mesophyll cells of C4 plants. But this enzyme is present in the bundle sheath cells, because without the Rubusco enzyme, there is no. The Kelvin cycle also takes place, but not in the mesophyll cells. It takes place in the bundle sheath cells. Since it has the two different types of cells present in the anatomy of the leaf, so this is like what? So we can say that this is a Hatch and Slack pathway. This is explained by these two scientists. So that is why it is named after those both scientists. And why we call it the C4 pathway? Because the first formed compound, see, look at here, the first formed compound is the C4 acid. C4 acid. This is also called as the malic acid. The malic acid. Okay. How this malic acid is formed? It is formed by the fixation of, see, look at here, by the fixation of phosphoenol pyruvate. Shortly, I call it as a PEP. This PEP and the CO2 both has combined together and form a C4 acid. That C4 acid name is called malic acid. So, in order to combine this PEP and CO2, obviously we need an enzyme. That enzyme is called what? PEP case. And before this slide I explained. Now the PEP case, in the presence of PEP case, CO2 combined with the PEP. PEP is a 3-carbon compound, both combined together. That process is going to call as a fixation. As a result of fixation, a 4-carbon stable compound is formed in these mesophyll cells. The stable compound name is what? The C4. So since it has the 4-carbon, this pathway is going to call as the C4 pathway. Now, this malic acid then transported into the another type of cells. That another type of cell name is called what? Bundle sheath cells. In the bundle sheath cells, Here, a decarboxylation takes place. That means a CO2 is removed from this malic acid in such a way that, see, the removal of the CO2, whatever the CO2 is removed, that is accepted, that is entered into the Kelvin cycle. That means in order to go for the Kelvin cycle, you all know very well, you have studied in the C3 plants. That that Kelvin cycle required an enzyme called rubusco. This rubusco is present in the bundle sheath cells, not in these mesophyll cells. So in the bundle sheath cells, the Kelvin cycle takes place. As a result of the Kelvin cycle, what happens? Starch is being produced. And at the same time, after removal of the CO2, so again the C3 acid is formed. This same C3 acid is again transported into the mesophyll cells, where this again go for the regeneration phase. That means this cycle, when we call it as a cycle, that should go, repeated. So like how this repeating reaction takes place, the C3 acid should be formed again. So that C3 acid again enters, fix the CO2, and then this process takes place continually. So the point is here important. See, C4 pathway means nothing but the first stable compound in these plants is 4 carbons. That is why it is called C4 plants, C4 pathway. So in these 2 types of cells are going to present. But in case of the C3 plants, only 1 type of cells are present. But here the 2 types of cells are present. I hope you understand this. So let's go for the one question regarding this concept. So only one question. So the question is, see, look at here, the source of the CO2 during the Kelvin cycle, the source of CO2 during the Kelvin cycle in C4 plants is, as I told you just now, there are 2 types of cells are present. One is what? The mesophyll cells. Other one is called the bundle sheath cells. In the bundle sheath cells, the Kelvin cycle takes place. Kelvin cycle takes place. Kelvin cycle. See what happens? I told you the mesophyll cells is going to produce the malic acid. This malic acid again transported into bundle sheath cells. Now, what is the question here? The source of CO2, like source of CO2. In order to go for the Kelvin cycle, it needs the CO2. This CO2 is given by, obviously, the answer. You need to check in the options. Option 1 is the malic acid. Option 2 is the oxaloacetic acid. Option 4 is the PEP. Option 4 is the RUBP. Obviously, it's a very simple. The answer is the malic acid. Okay, so I hope you understand this concept. Thank you.